Well, as many of you are probably aware, we have a brand new blasphemy law in this country. Now, you might have thought, given what we've all been through in the past year, economic bust, zombie banks, massive unemployment and emigration, not to mention the floods and snow in recent weeks, that the very last thing we need is our government to be focusing its energies on the ancient crime of blasphemy. So what is going on? Why bother to introduce this new legislation? Was it really necessary? And should we be concerned about the impact it's having beyond these shores? Katie Hannon has this report.
It just goes to show, Dougal, nobody takes a blind bit of notice of what the church says anymore.
Or do they? Ireland has hit the headlines around the world since the new year for appearing to take a great deal of notice of what the church says and of what is said about the church. The international media has been fascinated by the latest addition to our statute book, a new law making blasphemy a criminal offence.
My jokes are so dangerous that the Irish government is offering legal protection to the creator of the universe.
I think it makes us look like a backward, priest-ridden Catholic state.
If you say something offensive about my prophet, it is something that is definitely not going to be tolerated.
Blasphemy was big in the Middle Ages when those who dared to challenge Christian dogma were regularly burnt at the stake. More recently, it tends to be those accused of offending Muhammad who risk paying a heavy price. The unbridled power wielded by the Catholic Church in Ireland until relatively recently ensured that books and films, such as The Life of Brian, were banned.
And so, as a blasphemer, you are to be stoned to death.
Yet despite that culture of censorship, there was only ever one attempt to test the constitutional ban on blasphemy, when John Corway took a case against the Sunday Independent after that newspaper published a cartoon depicting the Eucharist in 1995.
In that case, the Supreme Court said that the common law offence of blasphemy was too unclear to give content to the constitutional word, the constitutional reference to blasphemy.
There is general bemusement as to the Minister's motivation for introducing this controversial legislation at this point.
We only came to know about it when it was published in the papers.
I'm not aware of any Christian groups whatsoever, anybody senior in any of the churches, or junior for that matter, who were asking for this law.
Although they say they didn't lobby for it, the Muslim community in Ireland has welcomed the legislation as a good start.
Well, I would be more delighted to see it going further and further, but it has taken the first step. And it will be very much ungrateful if we did not express our gratitude and support it.
A spokesperson for the Jewish Orthodox community told Primetime that they also welcome the legislation. However, other fans of the new law are thin on the ground.
I've never been in favour of laws that actually curtail free speech. And I mean, there's no necessary contradiction, with Christianity in taking that position. I mean, again, historically, Christians have in fact been often against free speech, but there's no necessary reason to have that belief against free speech. I mean, my main concern these days actually isn't with anti-blasphemy laws. It's with so-called anti-hate speech laws, which have been used the world over now to curb free speech.
Fairly gentle gag. It's innocuous. It's fairly tame as they go. It's depicting God the Father. Is that blasphemous? I don't know. Am I making a mockery of him? Am I slagging him?
Cartoonists like Graham Keyes frequently turn to Jesus and other Christian imagery to drive home a point. But recent events have reinforced a reluctance to treat Muslim imagery in a similar fashion.
There seems to be that they do have a problem. They don't depict visually Muhammad. So, yeah, I've no interest in stirring that up. I like my life. I wonder about comedians who are much more cutting edge and they just have them in the audience and there's no barrier. I wonder what they can say these days,
I'm sorry if you've been offended. That isn't what I meant to do. I'm just trying to say oral sex is divine if you love someone and they love you. A couple of years ago, I realised that if Jesus Christ were to return to Earth today, there is no way he would get through US immigration. I mean, he's a Middle Eastern guy, he's got a beard, and he wants to die as a martyr. He'd probably end up in Guantanamo Bay. And I've taken the show to America, to Pakistan, but it was in Belfast that I got in the most trouble. There was a bomb scare at the theatre, some Christian funding a bomb scare, which I think breaks one of the commandments. Thankfully, he was only bearing false witness, so I forgive him. But there was a guy in the DUP who said that what you are doing is blasphemous. And again, I had this point. I said to him, look, what's more blasphemous to you? Me telling jokes about God or the Americans torturing his children?
Under the new legislation, those convicted of blasphemy are liable for a €25,000 fine. But legal opinion is divided on the likelihood of there being a successful prosecution.
Well, the offence requires that you are grossly abusive or insulting of a religion and that there be no redeeming social value in what you say. So it's actually quite difficult to conceive of circumstances in which some comment is going to be both grossly abusive and insulting and has no redeeming social value. Difficult, but not impossible.
Blasphemy.ie was launched by Atheist Ireland as part of its campaign against the legislation. Since the Act became law on January 1st, the website has published a raft of material it believes to be blasphemous, including statements by Jesus, Muhammad, Pope Benedict, Monty Python, Reverend Ian Paisley and Bjork.
We are now asking the state, are they going to prosecute or not? If they are going to prosecute, then we will challenge the constitutionality of the Act. If they're not going to prosecute, then it strengthens the political arguments for repealing the law on the basis that a law that isn't enforced should not be on the books.
A spokesperson for the Justice Minister has told us that he would not object to a referendum on the issue, but that, in the meantime, he had to act to address a constitutional anomaly on the advice of the Attorney-General. He added that there were so many caveats in the new legislation that convictions would be difficult to secure.
He started off trying to bring in a piece of legislation that had no safeguards and that had a €100,000 fine. So that was his intention at the start, to bring in a serious law that did have teeth. He did water it down as the public criticism and the criticism by the opposition TDs and the Justice Committee emerged. But what we still have is a law that is both silly, because it's a medieval religious law in a modern pluralist democracy, and it's also a dangerous law because it incentivises the type of outrageous behaviour that Muslims in particular have engaged in recent years when something happens that they're offended with, whether it be a cartoon or a novel or some sort of other statement.
However, the deeply devout say it's simply a matter of respecting their beliefs.
For Muslims, we take our religion as something very serious. In fact, we see it as the most important aspect of our life. We give it priority, and we describe it as the greatest value that we have. We don't impose it on others, but all that we ask others to do is that do not degrade it, full stop. Is that a reasonable request?
Indeed, Islamic countries have been pushing to have blasphemy made an offence in international law at UN level, a campaign that Ireland has strongly resisted. Last March, Foreign Affairs Minister Micheál Martin explained the Irish position. We believe that the concept of defamation of religion is not consistent with the promotion and protection of human rights. Ironically, Pakistan has now adopted the wording of our legislation in the latest effort to extend anti-blasphemy laws across the United Nations.
Now, as we predicted in our submission to the Department of Justice when this law was going through the Oireachtas, the Islamic states are using the Irish law to support their attempts to make defamation of religion a crime internationally, and they are in fact now quoting the wording of the Irish law as best practice and as what they want introduced internationally.
Down with this sort of thing. Careful now.